So hello everyone, this will be a mega saga and we're going to cover one of the most important topics out there, that's been the interlinkage of society and economy out there. And again we are going to cover this from a multi-dimensional perspective out there. Okay, so let's begin with this. Let's begin with this. As you know, the mains has been approaching and your first essay exam would be on 22nd August out there. So we will be in the last leg and we'll try to push from our side and hope that you'll also push from your side out there and put some extra effort out there in the last few days. So let's begin with this. Again, the theme has been very important. We have covered this whole series based on certain themes called economy and society. Interlinkage has been very important. Interlinkage, because again, if you're going to look, if you're going to look what we called as economy. See, without societal development, there is no economy. Without economy, there will be no what we call as a societal development. So these are interlinked with each other. Economy and society are being interlinked with each other. Economy and society are being interlinked with each other. Are being interlinked with each other, interlinked with each other out there. So that's a very important thing. You have to keep in mind that in economy section, you have to give certain societal dimensions. In society, you have to give certain economy dimensions because both are interlinked. Without societal development, there won't be any economy development. Without economic development, there won't be any societal development. I'm talking about development. You must have known that there has been a debate of what we called as growth versus development. Growth versus development. As you can see, sir, growth is just a number out there. So if I say that India is the 4th largest economy out there, it's a bloody number. It doesn't show that on what basis are we developing on human development? Are we investing too much of human development? Are we investing too much on education out there or health out there? No, it just depicts number. What we call as GDP. That's mean it's a 4th largest economy, but we still don't know whether there has been some progression in human development out or not. Okay, human development out or not. So growth versus development, that has been what we called as certain things. You have to keep in mind. Now let's go into the PPT out there. So look at this. The economy and society are not separate domains, but deeply interlinked structures that influence each other in shaping development outcomes. Okay, that development, it's very important. So for example, if there has been a societal development, now consider this. A lot of people are getting educated, a lot of people are getting the knowledge of AI out there. It will lead to creation of what we called as a human production, as a valuable human productivity out there, because a lot of people know about AI out there. They are skilled. Now what? They're going to run certain companies out there or open certain startups out there. There has been a societal increment in the form of education. That shaping our economy, because as people are progressing, as people are getting the quality education out there, they are delivering that education in economic sector out there. That's how it's been overlinked. Now consider this. If we have what we call as a healthier workforce out there, no one is anemic, everyone is perfectly fine, they will do their work 100% out there. Efficiency will be there. Now again, health is good, it will directly transform into what we call as a better work productivity out there. Now there's been a linkage between health, that's again nothing but a human society part out there, and it's been interlinked with the society at the same moment of time, because thank you Arvind, because that's been doing that. Okay, this is what we called as interlinkage of economy. This is called economy and society. And you need to think on this lines. You need to link on this lines. This is nothing but what we call as intersection point. This is nothing but what we call as intersection point. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Let's move on to the next slide. India's economic growth. We are here to study what's called India's economic landscape between 24 to 25. GDP growth forecast for 25-26, positioning India as the fastest growing major economy globally. Good, that's number out there. But sir, we are heading towards what we called as jobless growth. We are heading towards what we called as a jobless growth out there. Jobless growth out there. Are we creating enough jobs in the economy? Possibly no. Are we creating enough jobs? No. Look at the number of vacancies that's been coming out in the government examinations. It's pretty low. It's pretty low out there because the vacancies has been very less in the recent moment of time. You must have seen what's been going with the SSC protest out there. There has been lower vacancies. Even in the UPSC out there, there has been a lower vacancies, not more than 1,000. We are not witnessing regular more than 1,000 vacancies in UPSC examination as well. So again, we are the fourth largest economy. We are the fourth largest. We are the fourth largest economy, but at the same moment of time, we are jobless growth. There has been a jobless growth out there. Growth is there. We are right after what we call as the US, China, Germany. The fourth is what? India. But again, the jobs are not being there. Be it in private sector, be it in government sector, the jobs are not getting there. Jobs are not being producing. Why? Again, there can be several reasons for that. For example, why there has been not too much of jobs out there? For government point of view, they want to save their money out there. But from the point of view of private sector, AI disruptions has been on high. AI disruptions are on high. AI disruptions are on high. Okay. Thanks, Gaurav. AI disruptions has been on high. That means AI is disrupting the economy out there. Consider this. If a certain moment of AI tool can do a particular piece of job in 2 hours and human can do a similar piece of job in 4 hours. So it's always applicable for the private sector to employ an AI tool as compared to the human one out there. It will be a cheap software as compared to the salary that's been given to what we called as certain human out there. That's different. That's very disruption. So AI has disrupted this. That's why we are heading towards growth. But at the same time, we are witnessing what we call as a jobless growth. There are not too many jobs out there. Unemployment is pretty high in India. I hope that's clear for you. Now, inflation rate. Around 4% present, a challenge impacting purchasing power and economic stability. Sir, inflation is a very tricky thing. It can be related with a lot of things. Like, for example, if there has been too much of inflation, you will not get too much of real rate of interest in banking. So, if a nominal interest rate is 8% and inflation is 6%, that means your real interest rate is nothing but 2% out there. That's nothing. That's peanuts out there. That's peanuts. So I hope you're getting this, that economic growth, though we are heading towards economic growth, but there has been a lot of problems that's been there inherently. Structurally, there has been a lot of problems out there. Fiscal deficit, 4.4% as a percentage of GDP, indicating the government borrowing needs. Okay, so 4.4% is not that large, but you need to know what's fiscal deficit in order to understand that, okay, now government is being borrowing too much, is being involved in what we call as a pump priming out there. But before that, you need to understand what's the fiscal deficit out there. fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit. What's a fiscal deficit? Completely, when you look at the fiscal deficit, it's nothing but total expenditure. Total expenditure. Whenever a term of fiscal comes, you always have to think about the government of India. It's nothing but total expenditure of government. Total expenditure minus total receipts. Minus total receipts out there, excluding borrowings. That means you're not going to include borrowings out there. Excluding borrowings. I hope you got this point. So for example, let me take certain values out there. If total expenditure, that means the expenses of government is, for example, is 17 crores out there. 17 crores. And it total receipts is nothing but 13 crores. Okay. The point is, you will say, sir, expenditure is 17 crore, but receipt is only 13 crore. What's the matter? From where they are getting a higher amount of, from where they are borrowing things? I would say, sir, they will borrow. Government do borrow things from banks, from market, from international governments out there, from international institutions like World Bank and IMF out there. Government do borrow. But we are excluding that. We are not including that. Consider this why. This 17 crore, this 13 crore. That means there has been a difference of what we call as a 4 crore. This 4 crore must have been borrowed from somewhere by the government. This 4 crore must have been borrowed by someone, borrowed by a government from someone out there. Now, if I included this borrowing, and turn this 13 crore into what plus 4 crore out there, the fiscal deficit would turn out to be 0. If I include borrowing, because this will come from borrowing. If I include borrowing, it will come under the total receipt out there. That 13 crore will become 17 crore out there, and 17 minus 17 will come out to be 0. And fiscal deficit can never be 0. And fiscal deficit can never be 0 out there. Fiscal deficit can never be 0 out there. Fiscal deficit can never be 0. If it comes out to be 0, I mean, why would you produce a budget out there in the first of Feb out there? How will opposition will target its natural government out there, or the government that's been ruling out there? Because the fiscal deficit turns out to be 0. That's why we don't calculate borrowings, because that's the reason we can ensure that there has been accountability to the government out there. Too much of borrowing is also bad. So again, if you want to calculate, you need to exclude borrowing by default out there. Otherwise, the fiscal deficit will turn out to be 0. Otherwise, the fiscal deficit will turn out to be what we call as a 0. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Again, total expenditure is nothing but capital expenditure is nothing but what we call as a capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure along with capital receipts plus total or revenue receipts. I hope you know these terms out there. Otherwise, how will you relate that? Otherwise, how will you relate these economic concepts? Let me give you a brief about this. What's capital expenditure? Brief about this called what's capital expenditure? What's capital expenditure? Any expenditure by the government, any expenditure that increases assets of government, or reduce down its liabilities, out there. Okay. So if a government gonna spend too much on what we call as roads and railways, if government gonna spend too much on roads and railways out there, roads and railways out there, that means they are creating assets. Out there. When you talk about liabilities is nothing. In Hindi, it is called as a karza. In Hindi, it is simply called as a karza or debt or loan, whatever you can call it. So, if obviously government does borrow from things, if they're going to repay, if they're going to conclude an expenditure or pay back its loan out there, or loan repayment, it will reduce down its liabilities. That's nothing but capital expenditure. loan repayment, loan repayment out there, loan repayment out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. That's called capital expenditure. Now come to another capital side, which is called revenue expenditure, because again budget has been divided into two aspects. One is capital and other is what we called as revenue side, out there. Other is called as a revenue side out there. So if we talk about a revenue expenditure out there, this is a sort of expenditure that doesn't have any impact on asset and liability, which doesn't have any impact on asset, and liabilities out there. That means it's not impacting any asset or liability out there, while capital expenditure have a direct impact on assets and liabilities out there. That's a pretty much clear thing. So revenue expenditure is nothing. For example, if a government pays, because we are talking about budget, so we are talking naturally about the government out there. So if government pays salaries to its government employees, out there, that means it doesn't have any impact on assets and liability, because it's neither creating assets nor reduced down liabilities. It's just a monthly thing out there to pay salaries to the government employees. It's not impacting anything out there. That's called the revenue side out there. That's called expenditure side out there. Now revenue, again for revenue out there, there's called capital revenue. There's called capital receipts or receipt side out there. Capital receipt. And revenue receipts out there. Now consider this. What's a capital receipt? Any receipt. So receipt is nothing but what we are getting it. Good afternoon, get well soon for hand. Oh, thanks, S. Thanks for this, man. What's capital receipt? Nothing. On a brief note, capital receipt is nothing what we are receiving out. Any receipt for the government, that's increasing the liability of a government. Again, whenever the term capital comes, you have to think it's been impacting assets and liabilities of a government out there. It's been impacting the assets and liabilities of a government. So capital receipt, any receipt by the government that leads to increase in liabilities out there, and reduce down the asset formation of a government. Out there, that's considered to be called as a capital receipt. That's considered to be called as what we call as a capital receipt. So I'm going to give you example. Any receipt, increased liabilities. For example, government borrowings. Any borrowings is nothing but liability out there. This has to be repaid in certain moment of time. So any borrowing eventually lead to increase in liability, or obviously government borrowings out there. Now, again, you have been thinking about a lot of news and reading a lot in the news out there. There has been what we call as a privatization going on. There are a lot of PSUs that the government are selling. Even Air India has been sold. So what it's been doing, they are selling things out there, reducing down assets. So if government in a future out there sells some PSU out there, so it's gonna receive some money, but there has been a reduction in the asset, because the PSUs are the assets of a government out there. So what it will lead to for selling PSUs, or its technical term or economic term is nothing but what we call as a disinvestment. Okay, that's called capital. It will always have an impact on assets and liabilities, while revenue, be it expenditure, be it receipt side out there, it doesn't have any sort of impact. On assets and liabilities. Revenue receipts, nothing but taxation. So any receipt that doesn't have impact assets and liabilities are but taxation. And taxation, are of completely two types. That is direct and indirect. Out there. Direct and indirect. Direct, simply corporate income tax, TDS. Indirect, your favorite, GST. Your favorite, again, tariff policies going on, custom duties. Okay, custom duties. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Okay, these are the basic things out there. So again, where were we? We were at a fiscal deficit. It's been 4.4%. It's not that large. It's not that large, because if government start borrowing too much out there, it will reduce down its credibility out there. It will reduce down its credibility. So 4.4, it's a decent enough. It's a decent enough number. It's a decent enough number. Not too large, not too bad. It's decent. It's decent out there. I hope that's clear for you. I hope that's clear for you. Let's move on to the next thing. Now, what are the social factors shaping economic development? As we have studied, there has been an intersection of what we call as a society and environment out there. There are certain factors that shape economic development. So it's a society that's been operating in the back end. Society that's been operating in a back end that provide impetus, that provide act as a catalyst or provide impetus for economic development. Impetus for economic development. For economic development. Economic development out there. Okay, let's see how it does. So middle class expansion. As you can see, there has been what we call as a middle class expansion. 31% of the population projected to reach 38 by 2031, driving consumer demand, driving what we called as a consumer demand out there. Now again, the consumption has recently increased in India. The consumption is recently increased in India. So if there has been an increase in consumption, there has been what we call an increase in household consumption. Recent statistics shows that there has been increase in household there has been recently increase in what we call as a household consumption out there. Household consumption out there, and lead to increase in household consumption leads to increase in demand, and increase in demand automatically lift economy that's been there in the despair, from despair to what we call as an infinity out there. Why? Because as soon as there will be increase in demand in the market, production will get boost. There will be what we spike. We'll see spike in production. Spike in production out there. We'll see spike in production. We will witness what we call as a spike in production. As soon as there will be a spike in production out there, trust me, the economy will stand and will attain what we call as an equilibrium point out there. Will attain what we call as an equilibrium point again. Because as soon as there will be a spike in production, trust me, employment gonna create. There will be employment elastic situation that will be created in the market. A lot of people will get job. Wages will get increased. Another, take wage spiral concept out there. As wages will increase, they're gonna demand more. As they're gonna demand more, inflation will again increase. As inflation will again increase, these laborers will still demand to increase their wages out there. They will protest or bargain something out there. Again, it leads to what we call as a wage spiral out there. And all these stuff is important for any economy out there. Now, increase in demand, and there has been a difference between what we call as a demand and an aggregate demand out there. Difference between what we call as a demand and aggregate demand out there. Now, for example, let me give you an example for this. If demand increased by 100 units out there, if it increases by 100 units out there, that means if it increases by 100 units out there, that means if you're going to satisfy this demand out there by supplying another 100 units, so there will be no impact on inflation out there. So if there has been a demand of 100 units out there, I'm going to satisfy this demand by supplying another 100 units. I will increase supply by another 100 units, by another 100 units out there. Okay, by another 100 units out there. So again, 100 units demand has been created. It's been satisfied by this increase in supply out there. That's again a simple situation out there. Now, no impact will be created on inflation. No impact will be created on. No impact created on inflation out there. Created on inflation out there. With respect to what we call as aggregate demand. With respect to what we call aggregate demand. Now look, there has been increase in the demand by 120 units. 120 units out there. 100 units has been supplied again, but still 20 units are left. But still 20 units are left. That 20 units will create demand or inflation in the economy. That extra 20 units. As you can see, that there has been demand for 120 units out there. You're gonna supply this, you're gonna increase your supply out there, but the maximum capacity of this supply cycle is that you can offer 100 units more, but still 20 units are left. These 20 units is nothing but what we call as an aggregate demand that will have a direct impact on inflation out there. It will create a certain amount of inflation. So aggregate demand have a direct impact on what we called as inflation, called as direct impact on inflation. Okay, I hope that's pretty much clear for you. I hope that it's pretty much clear for you how consumption goods or increase in consumption demand is leading to what we call as this. Now the middle class will increase, and middle class have a decent amount of disposable income. Disposable, what you have in pocket out there or what you can spend, liquidity. So they have a decent amount of disposable income out with them, and they can create a demand. They can create or stimulate demand in the economy, or stimulate demand in economy. Stimulate demand in economy out there. Okay, stimulate demand in economy out there. Stimulate demand and economy out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Youthful workforce, 600 million strong with 40% under 25 offers a demographic dividend. Now look at the social factors, how they're shaping economic development. Expansion of middle class, it's a societal concept. As soon as middle class will expand, disposable income will be there. They're going to create demand out there, and it will be a positive for the economy, because a certain amount of demand will create a certain amount of inflation, which is extremely necessary for any society out there, and for any economy out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Now, workforce has been different. There has been too much of, see, India is a young nation. The average age of an Indian workforce is 28 years, approx 28 years. Now look, we want to reap what we called as a demographic dividend. We want to reap what we called as a demographic dividend. We want to reap what we called as a demographic dividend. Demographic dividend out there. We want to reap what we call as a demographic dividend out there. What we call as a demographic dividend out there. What we call as a demographic dividend out there. Now the point is, we have a young force. We have a young force out there. There are a lot of people who are looking for a job. There are a lot of people who are in the job as well. But opportunities are seldom or rare. Opportunities are seldom, or what we call as a rare. Why? Again, AI disruptions has been there. Skill deficit is another problem out there. Skill deficit. Skill deficit has been another problem. Now look at this, all these things. We haven't invested too much in our education system. It's still very archaic out there. Look at the syllabus. It's not being updated regularly out there to keep a match with what market requires out there. That's why you can see even today's out there, a lot of engineers don't get jobs, a lot of MBA graduates don't get jobs, a lot of people are getting fired on regular basis. Why? Because there has been a skill deficit out there. There has been what we called as a skill deficit, complete skill deficit. People don't know what to do with their education out there, what to do with the graduation degree out there. That's a completely useless in present day world out there. So what they're going to do? They need upgradation. They need upgradation. We have demography. We have young force. We have healthy young force. We have brilliant minds out there. But again, the direction is being misled. The direction has been misled, and we have to do certain things very, very quickly out there. Otherwise, we will miss this train. Otherwise, we will miss this train, and the demographic dividend that we want to reap will turn out into what we call as a demographic disaster. What turn out to be what we call as demographic disaster. What we call as a demographic disaster out there. Okay, demographic disaster out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. So demographic dividend, if you want to reap, we need a robust policy out there so that it can upgrade our education system, kind of education system that can keep pace with what the market requires, That's, I mean, there are certain institutes that keeping the pace with the market out there. It's IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, Indian School of Business, Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University. All these are good institutes, but I mean, how many can get into that? On an average, for MBA out there in India, it's 25 to 30 lakhs. But again, consider this. We need a good policy. We need upgradation in our education system. We need to offer skill to our youth so that we can reap what we call as a demographic dividend, and we don't want to miss our train. Otherwise, this will turn out to be what we call a demographic disaster. And so the major hurdle or the major outcome of demographic disaster, it will lead to what we call as a conflict in society that we are witnessing at this moment. Conflict on basis of religion, caste, etc. On basis of conflict on basis of what we call as religion, caste, etc. Okay, I hope that's pretty much clear for you. That's it. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Now we've done this. Another is informal economy. A significant portion of the workforce operates informally, with only 1.6 paying income tax, highlighting challenge in formalizing the economy. Now these are the social factors that again shaping what we call as economic development. Informal economy. Any street vendor is nothing but an informal economy. If you see what we call as radies and carts, food carts out there, any street vendor out there, or any kirana ka shop out there, this is nothing but informal economy out there. They are not registered under any income tax or Companies Act out there. As a result, only 1.6% paying income tax. Only 1.6%. Now the problem with this is, if a lot of people engage in informal sector, out there, a lot of people engage in what we call as the informal sector out there. That means government going to suffer. Because they will not get what we call as the income tax. There will be reduction in the income tax. Received by the government. So its revenue receipt will fall down. Ultimately, what it will lead to? Revenue receipts will fall down. Revenue receipts will fall down out there. Okay, Now, when revenue receipts will fall down, government will extract that from middle class through what we called as an indirect tax, which is also considered as regressive tax, taxation. Regressive tax out there. As soon as government will realize that, okay, a lot of people are engaging in an informal sector out there, we are not getting a bloody income tax from that through which we are not receiving too much of budget out there. We have a budget constraints. So what we're going to do, we're going to extract that from middle class and a working population out there through our system biggest financial reform, that's called regressive taxation, nothing but GST. GST. Why I'm calling this regressive tax out there? Take an example of two people out there, A and B. A and B. Take an example of two people out there called A and B. Called A and B out there. A and B. Now the point is, if A is earning 100 rupees a month, 100 rupees a month, and B is earning 1000 rupees a month, and they both went to the market to purchase what we call as a packet of bread out there, Now assume for the easy calculation that a GST that's been divided on this packet of bread is 1 rupee. Now look, A is earning way too less as compared to B. A is earning 100, B is earning 1000. A is earning 100, B is earning 1000. A earns and pays 1 rupee as a GST. So it is 1 upon 100 into 100. That is 1%. He is paying 1% of his income on GST. 1% of income. 1% of income on what we called as a GST. But this person, that is 1 upon 1000 into 100, paying only 0.1% of income on GDP. 0.1% of income on what we call as on GST. Now you can imagine a person who is earning way too less as compared to B is paying more percentage of his income on GST as compared to the person who is earning a higher end, So again, if informal sector will be too high, government gonna extract. They have certain ways out there, but it gonna impact the working class population and the middle class population the more, because it gonna extract from them through GST, through their tool called GST, through their tool called what we called as a GST. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Now again, we have discussed a lot of points. The fourth is a social safety net. Welfare programs support 800 million people, playing a crucial role in preventing widespread social unrest and ensuring basic needs are met. So the point is simple. If you're going to leave too much of people on their own, and if they don't get an appropriate opportunity or don't get what basic necessities are in the form of roti, kapda and makan, there will be social unrest. There will be riots out there. There will be too much of crimes. It's a sociological theory that too much of idle time or too much of inadequate access to opportunities will ultimately lead to a rise in crimes out there. To avoid social unrest, to avoid any sort of social unrest, or rise in crimes out there, it will certainly lead to what we call as. So that's why government, in order to avoid this catastrophe out there, this catastrophic event out there, government is what it's doing. It offers PDS. Again, there are a lot of schemes that government is running. One is public distribution scheme, through which you can get very cheap food grains out there. PDS is there. Another is subsidies being offered. Another is Narega, 100 days employment guaranteed. So all these stuff are there that government is doing. All these stuff are there that's government is being doing in order to avoid any sort of social unrest and increase in crimes. Out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. So these are the social factors that shaping the economic development. I hope you got the connect. Again, we want to hit we want to hit at this point, we want to hit at this point, we want to hit at this point, we want to hit at bang on, hit on target, which is nothing but intersection point, which is nothing but called intersection point, nothing but what we call as intersection point out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. Economic policy is impacting, what we call as economic policy is impacting society. Tax cut. 2025 union budget personal income tax cut aims to boost middle class consumption. Now again, how economy is impacting society? We are at the reverse end. If you're going to cut tax rates out there, that means there will be more disposable income out with the family out there. They can spend on upgradation, they can spend on health, they can spend on what we call education, they can spend on insurance policy out there. This is going to lead to what we call as an upliftment of society, or leads to what we call as a better standard of living as compared to the previous one out there, as compared to the previous one out there. I hope that's again clear, because tax cuts gonna directly improve the standard of living, improve the standard of living out there. Okay, GDP boost. Tax stimulus expected to increase GDP by 0.6 to 0.7%, stimulating overall economic growth, overall economic activity. See, as soon as GDP will get boost now, as soon as you will realize that, okay, forget about human development. If even numbers are increasing, we to some extent we can imagine that, okay, now a lot of jobs will be created. That means the economy is running on a full potential out there. Jobs will get created in future, and that will again help society to increase or uplift its standard of living, uplift its standard of living out there. I hope again this point is easy out there, easy out there. Again, the coming is the social stability. Welfare payments and subsidies are vital for maintaining social stability and alleviating poverty. We have already seen that government offers this in order to avoid social unrest. Reverse that point and you're going to get that, okay, government is doing that economic policy in order to avoid any sort of social conflicts. Any sort of social conflicts out there. Any sort of social conflicts out there. Okay. Inclusive growth. Policy reforms are essential for achieving sustained and equitable economic growth. Now, so inclusive growth is very important. Inclusive growth is extremely important out there. How this policy leads to impact society. Now, look at this. The ad that shown on a TV for policybazaar.com out there. What's it? It wanted to increase the penetration of life insurance, health insurance out there. Now, as you will include every other person, or what we call as a financial inclusion out there, it's gonna impact society in a very positive manner. So people, it will reduce on dependence. No? So if you buy what we call as a life insurance, you will not be dependent on any other person out there. It will possibly increase your upliftment, or it will make you what we call as a self-dependent person out there, not depending on any other XYZ or government out there. You will be self-sufficient for your whole life. You will be self-sufficient for your whole life. That's called inclusive growth. That is called inclusive growth out there. I hope that's pretty much clear for you. I hope that's pretty much clear for you how even economic policies are impacting society in a long run. Are impacting in a long run. Challenges in economic social nexus. What's the challenges out there? What's the challenges out there? So again, the second point, look at the stagnant job growth. There are not too much of jobs out there. There are not too much of jobs out there. Mittu, good afternoon, Mittu ji. Consumption disparity. Weak urban consumption contrasts with stronger but uneven rural growth. Now, there has been a disparity out there. There has been a disparity out there. Rural sector is not growing that much as compared to the urban sector. So again, there has been a disparity. Even if we look at that, the GDP in urban sectors are increasing while there has been a decline of a GDP out there in the agriculture sector. So that's another difference. That's another difference out there. Look at this. Stagnant job growth. Despite economic expansion, as you know that there has been a fourth largest economy out there in terms of nominal GDP, job creation lags, especially for youth, leading to underemployment. Okay. Now there has been a weak urban consumption as well. There has been a weak urban consumption as well, contrast with stronger but uneven rural growth. There has been an uneven rural growth. that's also impacting the potential of youth out there in the rural India. So there has been a mismanagement in the economic and social nexus, as we have studied how society leads to expansion of economy and how economy leads to expansion of society or upliftment of society out there. But there are certain limitations that's been there existing, that's been there in the existing part. Trade barriers, risk from global trade. Again, economic is not functioning at this because of geopolitics out there or geopolitical tensions. We need to see how economy will function in the future out there. We are not sure about the future because there has been a trade policies or tariffs that's been imposed by what we called as a Trump administration out there, 25% tariffs out there. So we're gonna see how economy will run in future. Persistent food inflation, more than 8% food inflation, disproportionately affecting the poor, eroding purchasing power. We want to eliminate poverty. We want to bring it down. We want to improve the standard of living. But there has been too much of food inflation out there. Again, impacting the purchasing power of poor, impacting the purchasing power of what we call people that's been living in the rural Indias out there. They don't have too much of source of income. They are more dependent on the agriculture out there, and agriculture is not performing up to its mark. There has been a heavy disguised unemployment that's been placed in the agriculture out there, and it's not contributing that. Okay, we're going to cover this agriculture in a future as well. And we will see how agriculture is being impacting the economy in a much detailed manner. Okay, so these are certain things that I want to discuss. These are certain things we want economy and society to be in sync, so that they can run simultaneously out there. Inclusion is the key. We need to include marginalized section in a mainstream society, be it women whose female labor force participation rate is less. We need to include even the geriatric people, the old age people. We can't make them idle out there. Don't make them dependent on someone else. Train them and use their world experience to the best of manner. Use their experience. That's how we're gonna create a healthy society and healthy economy out there. Policy, we need a good policy out there because we are fourth largest economy, but again, look at the point. We don't have jobs. It's a jobless growth out there. We need to create jobs. Government are not coming with too much of vacancies out there, be it UPSC or be it any other SSC out there. Recent SSC protests even shows you that. Integrated solution. We need to integrate that. We need integrated solution. We need to uplift economy so that it can manage society, and we need to improve society so that it can uplift economy. How you can improve society? Obviously by offering them better education, upgraded education and health, so they can turn out to be what we called as a healthy workforce in the economy. So this was the lecture that I want to present to you. I hope you like that. And we will continue with this series. Don't worry about that. If you have any doubt, you can contact this institute called Job Grade IAS, and I'll be there with you. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you.